Thank you all for being here today. We're very excited to welcome Elaine and really define the map for multimodal design today. Looking at the chat, we got people from all over the world, all in the conversation design or conversational AI space. So we're really excited to dive deeper on this topic. So first off, welcome. We're, like I said, excited to have everyone here for our next workshop. Just a quick reminder that you can find Voiceflow on desktop or on the browser at voiceflow.com. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. We'll have updates about this workshop and future events there. And more than anything, we are recording this event, so it'll be on YouTube after the fact later this week. So you can always come back and grab all of the helpful information that Elaine will drop later today. So I want to introduce myself first. My name is Sam Burns. I'm the Growth Marketing Manager at Voiceflow. You can find me on Twitter at @theburnsy9 or send me an email whenever you have any questions about Voiceflow in general. I'm on the growth team alongside Emily and Mark, who you might already know from past events. But the star of the show today, the person we're incredibly excited to have with us, is Elaine Anzaldo. Elaine, welcome to the Voiceflow workshop. Elaine, do I got you there?
Yeah. Hi, Sam. Hi.
How are you?
Everyone. I am a little nervous, but I'm very, very excited. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm very excited to have you here, but also just a little teaser, the amount of helpful information and helpful frameworks that you put together for people, I think is going to be fantastic today. So we're excited to have you. And yeah, I think people are going to get a lot out of this workshop. So I'll give a little bit of an intro before I pass it over to you for some of your slides. So let's start first with, for anyone who's new to Voiceflow in general, what we do is we make it very easy to design, prototype, and launch conversation experiences across virtually any channel. So really what we're ultimately trying to do is democratize conversation design and development for everyone. But what we know for all of those channels, and Elaine, I'm sure you're seeing this today, is that the more channels we add, all of those channels often are finding themselves to be multimodal in nature, which means that we can't just think in voice, we can't just think in visuals. We have to think about how those come together. So we're very excited to have you help us come up with that map today. So I'll stop sharing my screen and get out of the way so that you can share your slides.
Okay. Perfect. Is it fine if I keep my video up, or do people want to see my face?
You can do whatever you like, but yeah, I'll monitor the chat in case people would like a little bit more FaceTime. But go ahead with your slides and we'll follow along, Elaine.
All right, perfect. So, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to talk today with Voiceflow about multimodal design. A quick disclaimer, I have a cat and he is very talkative. So if you hear meowing in the background, it's him. His name is Caesar, and he just wants to be on all of my calls. All right, so quick introduction to me. Again, my name is Elaine Anzaldo. I am currently a conversational UX designer at NLX. You have my contact here. I'm very active online on Twitter at Elaine in the Bay, and you can email me, elaine@nlx.ai. So mostly what I do is I'm the lead designer for Voice Compass, which is our latest product offering at NLX, which is a multimodal experience. So what we do at NLX is we power conversational experiences. We're a startup focused on providing enterprise-level customer self-service automation in all of its shapes and forms. Again, our latest product release is Voice Compass, which actually combines SMS, IVR, and a multimodal mobile web experience to help users achieve a task. So it's been very fun to actually delve into multimodal design and really see that it's very different. It's It's not really web, it's not really voice, it's kind of like a different world in itself. And if you want to read more about us at NLX, I'm giving you our website link and our Twitter handle. So just to get things started, let's quickly define multimodality. It's become a very big buzzword in our industry right now, but let's kind of break down the mystique and just really look into what it is. So this is personally one of my favorite definitions about multimodal design. So I'll just read it out. Multimodal design is the art and science of creating user interfaces that combine different modalities across multiple touch points. I really appreciate this quote because, again, it's a whole new world out there. It's not just an art, it's also a science. We have to be always backed by data, users, and recognizing that it's about an experience that has multiple different transitions, multiple different touch points, and it's constantly evolving as a user goes through a journey. So this quote, I actually got it from the Global Design and Product Manager at HSBC. He has so many great articles on Medium. Please check him out. I think it's just great to read. Okay, so multimodal design. We're talking about multiple touch points, but again, we gotta go back to the basics. Who are we as people and what does multimodal mean? So multimodal means it's just catering to all of our different physical senses, you know, touch, sight, smell, taste, and hearing. We probably don't taste a lot of our products, but we do learn a lot about our environment using multiple senses together. We use our senses in a combination to make better sense of our world and our environment. It's how we develop habits, how we make things in our environment feel more real and thus become more memorable. So this is a really powerful aspect of design just because of this. It's actually getting to the very foundations of human psychology of what makes us human. So if we're able to tap into making a design, you know, more memorable for someone, more enjoyable, I think it's a great space to start and to work in. Again, going back to the basics, how do we communicate as humans? We're not just like trying to put our tongues up on everyone that we meet. We actually are just living out in the world, but we do communicate and we do interpret different kinds of senses, whether it's gestural. So if you think about, you know, a cop in the middle of the street, you know, designing the flow of traffic for cars to pass, people have to interpret his hand signs so that they know when to stop and when to go. Or visual, you see people dancing, you see them smiling, you know what kind of mood they're in. Or oral, it's not sometimes just what we say, it's how we say it, our tone, our pitch, our prosody, everything. So all of these inputs and outputs combine to make our experiences real. And again, if multimodal design is so natural, why haven't we ever done that before? Well, multimodal design is a buzzword now, and technologies are catching up to it now, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't ever been thought about before. So I'll just give you a quick blast from the past. If you haven't seen this already, this is kind of like very conversation design history 101. I'm going to show you the concept video that Apple released in 1987 that showing the knowledge navigator, which was a very groundbreaking concept video. So I'll just start that.
You have 3 messages. Your graduate research team in Guatemala, just checking in. Robert Jordan, a second semester junior, requesting a second extension of his term paper. And your mother reminding you about your father's surprise birthday party next Sunday. Today you have a faculty lunch at 12 o'clock. You need to take Kathy to the airport by 2. You have a lecture at 4:15 on deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. Right. Let me see the lecture notes from last semester. No, that's not enough. I need to review more recent literature. Pull up all the new articles I haven't read yet. Journal articles only? Fine. Your friend Jill Gilbert has published an article about deforestation in the Amazon and its effects on rainfall in the sub-Sahara. It also covers drought's effect on food production in Africa and increasing imports of food. Contact Jill. I'm sorry, she's not available.
All right, so that's just a little bit of the taste of the video. If you want to check out the full one on YouTube, feel free. All you have to do is just type Apple Knowledge Navigator and it will show up. But the thing I love about this video in particular is just how fluid the conversation feels. Of course, this technology didn't exist and wasn't built out. It's just a concept video, but it just shows how dynamic a conversation with a computer could be. The user, in this case, our protagonist, is not looking at the screen all the time. He's able to interrupt whenever he wants. He's able to look into the details when he's pulling up search results of articles. And it's more personalized. The Journey Assistant is right there on the screen. He's looking directly and you can see when he's active and talking, and he is able to say, hey, your colleague had this article released. So it just shows you how tapping into multiple senses at one time just feels more natural. It just feels, it is, it is a computer. We know that because of the robotic voice, but it's just so exciting to see something from so long ago, just having these same concepts that we're only just seeing now. All right, and I am not going to bore you guys. I actually do want to make this part of the presentation interactive. So Sam, if you want to come back up, I'll need your assistance for this part.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Great. So again, tapping into our multiple senses, get ready to type and, feel your fingers in the keyboard. So first question of our pop quiz. Apple's Knowledge Navigator concept video was well received. True or false?
We got a lot of falses right now from the chat, Elaine, a lot of falses.
All right. All right, I see we got one true.
Got a couple of true.
Falses. Nice.
Kind of spread across the board, but it looks like it's leaning a little bit false. What do we got for an answer?
All right, so it is false. Most of you are right. So it's actually very funny, but coming from the former Apple CEO, John Sculley himself, he was interviewed in Business Insider, and he actually said at the time we came out with it, it was incredibly controversial. People said, this is absurd, which is kind of funny because I was just remarking like how intuitive this is and how amazing it would be, but people just thought this was silly, like that this wasn't real and not possible. Isn't that amazing, Sam?
It is. And we look back now and it's incredibly exciting to see obviously what this could look like with today's technology. But I think, society has to be ready for those technological advances too, right? Because you use them on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're a little bit overconfident, true, because we have the technology now. Maybe it wasn't possible before, and multiple things had to happen. Like people had to get used to smartphones.
Absolutely, and that took a little bit, right?
Yeah, it did. All right, let's move on to the next question. If people don't know, fun fact about me, I used to work on the Siri team at Apple as a contractor. So what year was Siri released? Is it A, B, C, or D? What year do you think it is?
We're getting a lot of A and B's right now. Well, now we have one of every answer. This is a tough one. We got a lot of A, B, B, a lot of A's and B's we're looking at. 2008, 2011, it seems like a lot of people are leaning towards.
Mhm. All right. Yeah, it looks good. So I will let you all know that it was actually 2011. So
Right.
people who answered B, you were right.
A lot of
Um,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually Siri out of the main three voice assistant series was the first one to get released. Fun fact also, Answer D 2014, that's actually when Alexa was released. So just, you
Wow.
know, another fun fact trivia of conversation design. All right. Last question. So this goes out to all of my conversation designers. Blank are a collection of phrases used to request an action in a conversation. What could that be?
We got a few intents, some variables, intent. We got a lot of intents, Elaine. I feel like my money's on intents for this one.
Same, there seems to be a lot of consensus here. This is getting very intense.
That is, can we give an award for the best chat message? That might be it. That's funny.
But that just made my day. Thank you, Lorcan. So revealing the answer, you're right, intense. I just wanted to make this one fun, just to keep all of you on your toes, because I know all of you are listening to this talk because you're interested in conversation design. All right, thanks so much, Sam, for helping out. I'm gonna get on rolling with the rest of the presentation.
Sounds good. Good questions.
All right, so let's talk a little bit into the makings of a multimodal designer. We are talking a little bit about what multimodal design is in a very abstract sense, but who could be a multimodal designer and what qualities do you need to have to be, good at it? And so I came up with this very simple checklist. If you have this, you're good to go. So do you need a product design degree? No. Do you need strong visual design skills? No. Do you need a profound impatience for bad UX, including long, boring presentations where you just feel like you're stuck and the person is just reading off a slide? Yes. So sorry, PowerPoint, but basically being robotic and just throwing information at people is not how we want to go. And I think for me personally, my profound hatred of people just reading off slides in class just fueled my passion for making things a little bit more spontaneous, more natural, and less rehearsed. Particularly, another fun fact about my background, I actually have a Bachelor of Science in biology. I was actually focused a lot on research, and the thing, I loved it, but the thing I really didn't like about it was basically what you see here. So much technical jargon. Like it's a requirement that when you have to write about your own research, you have to make it as confusing as possible for anyone reading it out there. I used to go to this seminar every week and where we have to read scientific articles. And it used to be like a whole task to do the entire week, literally write notes on the margins, like what the heck does this mean? What article are they referencing? What am I even looking at in this diagram? Why are there no labels? So basically, I just couldn't stand the fact that we couldn't make things more natural and more simple because, scientific research is really important, but it feels like there's a lot of knowledge gap out there and it just didn't feel right. So I think that also contributed a lot to my thinking now in multimodal design is to just keep things simple. All right, so the big question of the day, is multimodal design similar to web design? Because you got that visual design component, you do have to think sort of with like a UI design lens to look at a screen and pair it with other modalities like voice. Is it similar? Yes or no? For me, I would say multimodal design is not an extension of web design. If you're starting out, if you're a beginner and thinking multimodal, I would say just focus on the not. There are similarities between multimodal design and web design, particularly when you're talking about accessibility, but when you're just starting out, they're not the same. Like, you should not be really focusing on making the UI perfect, upskilling your like product design skills. You really should be thinking about it as a conversation, like when you're at a dinner party and you just got a really great memory, like you just had this thing pop up in conversation. You're like, I have a perfect meme for that. I have a perfect video that showcases exactly what you just mentioned. You pull up your screen and you show it to someone. It should feel natural like that. It shouldn't necessarily be so polished and rehearsed like you see in web design. So the general rule of thumb, I guess, for web design, and this is not true in all cases, but generally for a good UX is to minimize the number of clicks, or in the case of mobile web design, just minimize the number of taps. I would say try to lean away from that kind of thinking. What you really should be doing is minimizing the friction across modes. And what I mean by that is reducing the competition that everything is trying to compete with, basically. So a lot of things can scream at a user on the website itself. When you add other layers to that, multiple things can become a distraction. And if they're not all aligned with each other, it becomes full of tension, a lot of friction. So basically, again, the general rule of thumb is just to keep it simple and to make each element intentional. Each component of your design should have a purpose. It should not just be there because it looks pretty or because you have an agenda. It should be always to help the user, make it user-driven. What do they need? What's relevant to them? This is a multimodal design, so you have to think about a user in their context. Is this relevant to them? Are they switching between modalities halfway through? You need to take all of that in consideration. So that was my ramble, but let's take a look at a practical application of this. So let's look at our experience in Voiceflow.
Awesome. I'll hop back in, Elaine, as you switch back over to the canvas here and give a little bit of background to what we're looking at here. So I went through and created a very basic, and by basic I mean very basic, shop voice flow assistant, right, for like an apparel or a swag store, right? And so just a real quick overview of this experience that hopefully you can come in and fix the multimodal errors and improve the multimodal experience. You know, we start with a welcome message. Then generally, although not many stores would function this way, we ask for what they'd like to shop for today. So we have 3 intents, right? We're selling hats, hoodies, and t-shirts. And then as you maybe want to scroll down a little bit, and you can actually exit out of prototyping if you want here, Elaine, just to see the full thing. So the full canvas. So we have t-shirts, hoodies, and then hats, as well as 3 intents. So if you want to maybe take a look at each of these intents, Elaine, and for the audience, maybe work through what are the errors when it comes to voice, text, and visuals that really need to be improved for this to be a successful assistant.
Yeah, so again, this is a cute little voice commerce experience. I know we had someone in the chat say they're also from a voice commerce company. So I think this is a very exciting application of voice and visual, because it's so easy to shop when you see a good website, to shop online, and adding voice to that could be really, really powerful. So let's just see here in the section of hoodies. Let's just test it out from here.
The Voiceflow hoodie has a side seam hoodie with a front pouch pocket that has a small hidden opening in the lining. Good for your phone cord. Can we add this to your cart?
Ooh. So just hearing it out loud, I think that this is a little too much information, not just in the voice, but also with the image here. So it's great that you want to give information in voice and in your image, but again, reducing friction and trying to not repeat yourself, trying to be a little creative in the places where you do repeat yourself to mark that emphasis. I would say we don't need this description. If people want to find out more about the hoodie, this should probably be broken down in an additional node that, asks, like, if a user wants more details about the product information, they could do that verbally. But up front, that was a lot to go through, don't you think, Sam?
Absolutely. And I think, it's hard not to laugh when you hear the assistant reads through the full product description and then gets served a mobile image that's just full of text, right? Like no user would ever want that, especially when an assistant is trying to make the purchase process easy and seamless, right? Like you said.
Yeah, exactly. So it just, again, when we're talking about voice, it should always be like a rule of thumb. It's like, how much can you say in a breath naturally? So that feels to me like multiple breaths just to say the Voiceflow hoodie has a side seam hoodie with a front pouch. Like that's just too much. So I think we could probably just
Yeah, you could just take half of that out, and then if you wanted to add another speak block, you can drag the speak block from the side canvas, the side panel there.
Yeah.
Right into the top actually, and you could even drag it and right into there. Perfect. If you wanted to create like a second stop. And honestly, Elaine, this is something too where it's like, maybe it doesn't even need all that description to communicate what they're actually looking at, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could probably just leave it as is here with half of the amount of text, but I think what we should also focus on is maybe replacing this image. This feels like a bit much.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's see. So I just replaced the image that had like loads of descriptive text under it with something that looks a little bit cleaner. So personally, I would go for this kind of design visually over the one that we had before. And I think we probably forgot to mention this, but we designed this experience for mobile. So if you think about looking at this image on your phone screen, your eyes, based on like the language, English, just naturally gravitate from left to right, top to bottom. So when I look at this, it just feels a lot smoother to scan the page. So I'm actually looking from top down, and that visual hierarchy is a very good plus in multimodal design.
Yeah, and I think to the point where we are tackling with the text up top, this is one way where we can say less from the assistant and let the image hammer home the second part of the message that we're trying to, the product benefit that we're trying to communicate as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like we want to emphasize the fact that not necessarily the front pouch, which is good for earbuds, but it is made out of a very nice, kind of almost luxurious feel fabric. So we would probably just want to emphasize that instead of like the hoodie with a front pouch pocket.
Absolutely.
So hoodie with a soft cotton-based fabric. And I would even put that in. We're emphasizing already the same thing along with the visual. So I would say for a luxurious, if I could spell that right.
That's a.
I don't know how to spell it right now.
I think it's LUXURIOUS.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. I think that looks right. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Jack.
All right. I'm going to test it from here. We're just going to do another like quick test of how that sounds now.
The Voiceflow hoodie with the soft cotton faced fabric for a luxurious. Can we add this to your cart?
Perfect. And you can escape out of prototyping if you want.
And that luxurious feel, everyone. Please don't come
just
at
with
me.
a luxurious.
Um,
And one note, Elaine, I want to point out too, for people who maybe are new to Voiceflow or maybe use it all the time. When you're doing those midway, in test prototyping like we're doing here, the image mockup you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen is not going to be the obviously one-to-one prototype. But that's one nice thing now with Voiceflow, as we have these visual blocks, we can change the screen size that you're designing for. So here on the canvas, we do see it in that mobile, iPhone vertical look and feel, as you see here, like the device. So yeah, you're able to toggle that and upload directly. So just one note where on the side you saw it cropped, but what we're seeing here is the actual one-to-one look that you'd see in the final prototype as well.
Yeah, so I think we're good with the hoodie. Of course, conversation design is all about iteration. So I would not feel like this is done. I would want to do more testing on that. But for now, for this demo, I think we're good with product information. Let's move to t-shirts and accessibility and branding. So I'm just going to test it out again.
Check out our Voiceflow t-shirt in black. Do you want it or not?
Ooh, something about that was really jarring. I think it was the last question, do you want it or not? I feel attacked.
It's a little rude, right?
Yeah, it is rude. It doesn't feel actually like the rest of the conversation. I think when we got welcomed, I felt like it was very enthusiastic and polite, and all of a sudden we just got this like very rude messaging at us.
Yeah, and Elaine, someone in the chat also said it felt very fast compared to the first intent, right? Where it felt like we sped through that and didn't really help the user, which is interesting. Not only rude, but also fast and quick.
Yeah, exactly. So that would also be a good SSML tip. I personally do edit the SSML for our Journey Assistant, because generally when we put like a very short phrase or very short sentence in voice, it does come off as a little fast. And I think generally a lot of our computerized voices speed through shorter phrases. So if you want to go ahead and just like change that processing, if you wanted to keep like a one sentence thing, that's a good thing to keep in mind. But I do have to switch gears now from voice to the visual design and say that something about this design feels very off. What do you think, Sam?
Absolutely. And I think even from the first intent, it visually strikes you oddly. It's hard to look at, and the colors don't really play well or make me think of Voiceflow in the slightest.
Yeah, so kind of like how we call that accessibility and branding. So I did make a small mention in my talk, but basically, again, even though this is not necessarily web design, we do see some similarities across different, fields of design. That's very true. And here, when we're talking about designing for web, especially mobile, we need to think about color contrasting. We need to think about font sizes to make sure that our product is accessible to not just a certain group of users, but open up the conversation to multiple kinds of users. So people who have, certain kinds of sight blindness, like this is not, or just in general, like I don't personally have any kinds of blindness, but this just looks very awful and it feels very off brand. So what I mean by that is when we're talking about keeping things simple in multimodal design and visual design, we need to be consistent all the way across. As soon as we go off brand or in any of our modes, so visual or voice, in this case, we went off brand in both, just a rude question at the end, and then this visual design that, to me, again, like Sam said, it does not remind me of Voiceflow. So I just want to go ahead and remove that like right away. That just looks awful. I'm going to change this with t-shirt. So again, we really want to make things stand out and to be usable. So this to me just feels a lot nicer, and it does remind me again of Voiceflow, because we were emphasizing a black t-shirt, but now we can actually see the black t-shirt.
it's also just like a lot cleaner, right? And it lets the product jump out. I see the price very clearly, right? Where the other time I couldn't tell you the other information on that image because I was so distracted by the orange and blue dots, right?
Yeah, same. So again, minimizing friction, reducing the amount of places that people feel distracted. Like if I'm distracted by your background and not on your product, that's a very bad thing, especially in voice commerce. So, and we want to make sure that we're still talking like Voiceflow was talking at the beginning. So we should just change that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not the friendly kind of even it's not even neutral, albeit friendly, brand persona. And I think that's so important because a voice assistant is clearly an extension of your brand, right? And if all of a sudden your voice assistant or any sort of conversational AI is rude or off-putting or computerized to a almost negative, that reflects on your brand and even just your employees, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would feel much better about this. Let's try to test it out.
Check out our Voiceflow t-shirt in black. Do you want to add this to your cart?
Nice. That looks a lot better, right?
Yeah, I agree. This is much better than what we started with. Prototyping. So I'm gonna move to the last one. And this is like a common faux pas, I would say, with image slicing and devices. So when we are switching context, or maybe we're switching screens, sometimes it's easy to forget the size of the viewport that the user is seeing this in. So if you could imagine that we created this experience originally in desktop and just happened to forget to resize our image to mobile, this is what it looks like right now. So when you see this on mobile, it's just like a very zoomed in crop of this beanie. And it's like, where's the rest of the beanie? Like, is there a different
I also
embroidery?
I also couldn't tell you that it's a beanie, right? If you didn't have the context around it, you have no clue what this is.
Exactly. So it is very important just to make sure consistency, not just for brand and for visuals, but actually about when you're thinking about designing for different screen sizes, make sure that the same image is viewable in each. So again, this is also kind of similar to when you think about responsive web design, but this is more of just like a very simple like visual design. People should be able to see the full image. Like if you spent time making this image pretty, it should be viewable. So let's replace that. All right, so this looks so much better. I can actually see it's a beanie and it only has one design on it and it says Voiceflow.
So much cleaner again, right? And it actually makes me want to buy that hat versus feel like I was looking at like a napkin or a towel or something, right?
Yeah, like what was that? I don't know. It was
No
like a
clue. And your users won't be able to tell you either because they already exited out or quit your assistant at that point.
Yeah, so again, the point of this experience was just to kind of like show, especially when you're coming right off from the welcome menu and just going into a different intent, seeing how you could just right from the start, maybe make the experience poorer. In this case, we were able to fix the main issues and make the experience richer. But again, this is just a demo. I would not call this done, especially if I'm working with a team of other conversation designers. I'd want to collaborate more. Again, someone is messaging in chat. You shouldn't always ask if you want to add it to cart, or
Yep.
at least you should make different like randomized like variations of that. Like, or again, like I mentioned, it would be nice if we could add a different speak block. So if someone wanted to ask about more product information via voice, they had that option to do so. But I think for now, this shows what you can build out with Voiceflow and what common blenders are out there. And yeah, again, like I really like, the Voiceflow editor. Like the important thing here is that you're able to see your voice, your conversation design, the flow of the journey, along with the actual visual you're designing for. That is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you feel that way after the quick demo, and I think I want to reiterate that as well. Like there are a couple of really good points in the chat about, there's so many more steps that you need to go to with obviously integrating your cart, a payment feature. You can randomize prompts so that anytime someone goes through an intent or a flow, then the assistant is serving a different way to say, do you want to add that to your cart, right? So you can build those in as the conversation design team. Yeah, any sort of Lyle says, prices, cart, payment gateway, all those things are possible with Voiceflow's API and in the integration opportunities that we have there. So that's definitely something that this is only scratching the surface of, but a great representation of multimodal, at least in these 3 intent steps. So yeah, happy we made those edits so you can actually look at this and not horribly have to look away right away, right, Elaine?
Yeah, exactly. Like now, even though this is just like the actual conversation design canvas, but I look at it at a glance, I know exactly what I'm looking at. This is a store.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it should be easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of Voiceflow, but I did, before we start closing out, I did want to mention that when you signed up for this event, I did say that there would be a framework. So that's actually available online in the Figma community. I've created this file that anyone can find online. Basically, so it has a copy of our slides from today's presentation if you want to review that on your own time, and also the framework. So what I kind of mentioned is just like questions you should ask yourself while you're designing, having your bot prompts, basically your conversation right next to your visuals. So if you use this, it's a great starting point. And this is kind of similar to what I use for my daily jobs when I design multimodal. Yeah.
Yeah, Elaine, this is incredibly helpful. And I teased it at the beginning. I also just dropped the link that you shared into the chat. So if you haven't looked at the chat, make sure to click on that link. We'll also send it out as part of the post-event recap. But this is the type of takeaway that I think designers at any level can immediately use and grow and build on their multimodal design skills, I'd say. So thank you so much for giving that extra effort for the audience here.
Yeah, of course. I'm very happy to talk about multimodal design and to give any advice for people who are just interested in learning more about it and like the actual tool of day-to-day, like what does a multimodal designer do? This is part of it. So very happy to share that. Now I'll get back to our slides real quick. All right. Over to you, Sam.
Perfect. Yeah, if we have a few questions I know that I've tried to answer throughout, but if you want to use the chat or the Q&A feature to we'll have about 10 minutes of questions, or 5 to 10 minutes depending on how many we have here. If you have any questions for Elaine or myself regarding Voiceflow and such, please drop those in the Q&A or the chat and we can answer them live, or we'll answer them after the fact too, so whatever. We do have one question, Elaine, here, which is for you. Q&A feature. The question is the NLX platform somewhat similar to VX Design, prototype, build tool like Voiceflow? Or maybe you can give a little bit of background on like what platform you're building at NLX right now.
Yeah, so I work on Voice Compass, which is more of like a service. So it basically allows enterprise level clients to give this like package experience to their users to not only free up their agents, but to also let users get what they need to get done without needing to escalate or transfer or waste more of their time, because people are put on hold for a crazy amount of hours and it's just not okay. So we're part of that in trying to ease that, try to make a solution there. But everything that you see in Voice Compass, and you can actually check out our Vimeo at NLX. Basically, in all of our demos, all of Voice Compass is built upon NLX Studio, which is our own internal platform. So when I'm designing for Voice Compass, I'm actually using NLX Studio, and that is not similar to Voiceflow. It actually gets a little bit more into the nitty gritty of, Sam was mentioning about all these integrations like API calls and all these features. It's kind of more of that. It's kind of showing you more of like the development side of making multimodal journeys. So personally, because I'm also like a visual designer and I design for mobile web, I use Figma. So my canvas is mostly Figma, and we do have internal tools to facilitate, that back and forth of voice and visual. But yeah, everything gets built on NLX Studio, and it's very fun. Like, it's our own internal tool, and it just feels like everything is within the family, basically.
Absolutely. And I think, Elaine, you mentioned as you started in the industry, Voiceflow was the tool that you really, was the foundation of what you were learning for combo design, right, as well.
Yeah, so I actually think it was especially helpful to start on one platform and get pretty comfortable using it, just so that I could, start my job and start learning about other platforms. I used Voiceflow not only once, because I did do Voice Tech Global Advanced Conversational Experience course. I forget the actual title, but it's a 6-week course, and I was able to use Voiceflow to make my final capstone project. And I think I also used Voiceflow in this year's hackathon. I forget when that was, if it was in March or something, but yeah, it was super fun. We were also able to design on Voiceflow.
Awesome. You mentioned Figma, which is actually interesting. We got a good question there about, is there a way to sync up Figma and Voiceflow? And I will say, if you remember what we were just looking at for that question, some of the text and the markup specifically, what you're able to do is export, for example, design something in Figma and export that as a PNG, and then you can drag and drop that image directly onto the canvas, and it's one canvas that you're working on right between your audio blocks, your voice, your speak steps, etc. And then you can place those, whether that's stickers, notepads, arrows, anything to help you communicate with your other designers, with your client, with your stakeholders, directly into the Voiceflow canvas. So that's a relatively newer feature. That markup is on one level now, and it operates very similar to Figma, but obviously for everything conversational design and conversational experiences. So good question there. And Elaine, you mentioned too that you use Figma to kind of use it as an illustration or a visual communication tool as well, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be like an either or. I think it would also be a good idea if you want to get into the nitty gritty of your design. You could probably just design something on Figma, export it maybe as like a PNG, and then you can upload it into the Voiceflow canvas. It's super easy to do.
Perfect. Let me see another question here. We had a question within the mobile space, Elaine, and maybe you haven't, but what kind of multimodal apps have you worked on? Is that specifically in the Voice Compass area? Would that be, or do you have other experience outside of that as well?
Yeah, so I do have to call out that when I was getting into conversation design, I was also learning about web development. So I actually did learn how to code a bit, and I was able to make my own conversation design portfolio by hand. It was completely coded by me. So that was my experience mostly prior to joining NLX and working on Voice Compass. Like, that's been my primary app for mobile design, but I do have experience in coding a bit and making sure things are responsive, because especially from personal experience, I launched my portfolio and a lot of people were telling me I can't see it on my phone. So I ended up having to put more work into making sure that it was actually legible for everyone.
That's a good note for anyone in any industry, right? To make sure things are mobilely optimized.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question here before we wrap up. 1 second here. Oh, this was a good one, and I know you have a couple answers for this, but any books to study more, to read to help study multimodal design, Elaine?
Oh yeah, there's so many good resources out there, but the two that come to mind is Cheryl Platt's book that came out recently. I forget the exact title, but I think it's designing across devices or something like that. I don't know if you can write. I'll just write it.
Yeah, design beyond devices, I see here.
There we go. Design Beyond Devices, Cheryl Platt's. That was especially helpful, not only because we're talking about multimodality, but we're also talking about things being multi-channel and how, you know, experiences can transition back and forth between different inputs and outputs. The same experience could live on different channels. So seeing how all that works. Another good book is actually the one Conversations with Things that was published recently by Rebecca Evanhoe and Diana Daybell. I really loved the chapter on more complex conversations. They actually do go into multi-channel and multimodal. So that was especially good, and not just for multimodal design, also just for conversation design. There is another one, I can't remember. It's a general UX design book. I think it's Designing Across Senses or something like that, but essentially it kind of feeds into the whole, you know, we're designing for people. People are human have these qualities. So kind of looking into that mindset.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing those. And I know we have about 5 minutes left and a couple more slides that is they're stocked full with good helpful information for people. So as we wrap up, do you mind going to the next couple slides here?
Yeah.
Perfect. So this one is very exciting for anyone in the chat here today. Elaine went very deep on this topic of multimodal design in our latest blog. So I'm actually going to drop that in the chat right now. Let me do that. Perfect. 5 tips for better multimodal design. Obviously, we scratched the surface on some of those tips, but this blog is fantastic, and Elaine really dives into exactly what the rationale behind some of these tips and things that you should probably bookmark this and use it anytime you need a refresher. So thank you, Elaine, for being an expert in our expert opinion section on the blog there.
Yeah, of course.
And then also, oh, we got an appearance from the cat there finally.
Yeah, Caesar's here.
Hi, Caesar. Samantha says meow. And then also this one is a screenshot, but we talked about, I had a lot of questions in the chat about templates and demos, and a good place to start. The team at Voiceflow is going through the process now of launching a templates library, but specifically we have a few templates that are accessible right now as we speak that you can copy the project and really work within. This one we think is a really good one to work with for multimodal and using a variety of content, from audio blocks to visual steps to voice and text. So this is like a company FAQ, but really can be used for any sort of kind of wiki type searchable assistant. So I'm going to drop that link to download the template in the chat as well. So it's a really good place to start. If it's your first Voiceful project or your 500th, a great place to kind of start and really practice some of these tips that Elaine mentioned today. And then a last call out, again, voiceflow.com for the desktop app or the desktop app or the browser experience, as well as Voiceflow at Voiceflow HQ. Tweet us at our Twitter. If I'd love to hear the biggest takeaway from today as you read through the blog. Let us know. Tweet at Elaine, us, myself. Let us know what you liked about today. We love doing these workshops and hopefully delivering assets and content that are helpful. And then lastly, this presentation will go live on our YouTube in the next couple of days. Very last note as well, Elaine, if you want to go to the last slide, a big shout out to join our community at bit.ly/VF community. It's our Facebook group. Tens of thousands of conversation designers are there and constantly talking about the industry as a whole, as well as obviously workarounds and projects that they're working on in Voiceflow. So just one last call out for their bit.ly/VF community. Well, Elaine, we made it to the end. First off, a huge thank you to you for being our expert, our host today. I think judging by the chat and some of the very insightful questions, people love this, and I can't wait to see what people do with the framework, the reading your blog, the templates, all that information. I think is incredibly helpful, and we're very lucky to have your expertise here today.
Yeah, no, it's been super fun. Again, like I didn't write a script. Everything was entirely improvised. No, but yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It's been a great time, and I really feel like we did start a good conversation here. So definitely, keep the conversation going. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.